Hello, everyone out there in Shochu'sday land. I hope you're enjoying your morning, afternoon, evening. And we're excited to be here with Ian Rittmaster from Umami Mart, although he's got quite a history in the hospitality and entertainment world. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But as we get started, what's in your glass? What are you sipping on today? As usual, I'm sipping on coffee, since it is still morning here. How about you, Ian? What are you sipping on?
It has just crossed the side of 6 p.m. and I am drinking Imo Shochu.
Nice. Which brand?
I've got the Tengu Zakura Yaki Imo, which is like new to the States and very, very limited. It's actually kind of I think that this expression is like export only. It's like a little bit higher. It's like 35% instead of 34. And I think they do some things differently, but I'm still trying to research it and find out more information about it. But it's pretty wild.
Well, that's from Shiraishi, which is a really well-respected handmade shochu maker in Kagoshima. That's hard. That stuff's hard to find in Japan. Even I do think you're right. I think the one that you've got that came to the States is actually export only. But the other expressions that he bottles in that same bottle are tough to find and very limited.
Right.
So it's cool that you've got access to that now.
Good.
Yeah, these are the when I was
difficult.
Sure. These are the kinds of shochu that when I was living in the States, I was lamenting never made it over. It was after visiting Japan and starting to visit distilleries and going to local shochu bars and things, realizing there's so much amazing stuff that we don't get in the US, because everything at the time was the big boys. It was all the mass market brands. But now you've started to get some really, really cool products coming over, like Shiraishi. And that's about 5 minutes from Yamato Zakura.
Yeah, it's in Ichiki, right?
Yeah, they're literally 5 minutes away apart from each other. You just walk to the signal across the street and then take a left. And then there's this little side street kind of veers off at an angle. And that's where Shiraishi is.
Awesome.
So you've got these two tiny handmade shochu makers within half kilometer of each other. And it's pretty
and then
special.
Hamada's there too, right?
That's right. Yeah, and actually in between the two, you've got Hamato, which is the largest shochu producer in Kagoshima, with their massive factory. But you got three of them all in this little basically clustered around the same intersection in this town of 7,000 people. And I guess that's sort of a good, just bringing that up maybe makes it a good time to talk about the fact that there is a new episode of Japan Distilled, which is part 2 of our day in the life of a shochu distillery, which is all about my time working at Yamato Zakura. The previous episode 34, we talked about the morning work, like how the mornings are spent. The second episode is the afternoon, and the third episode, which will come out in a couple of weeks, is about the evening, because it's not an 9 to 5 job. It's an all day sort of thing. So and you said you had actually listened to that. Is that right?
Yes, I've listened to the morning and the afternoon. If you're watching, you haven't listened yet, I highly recommend it.
Cool. And it's a little different from what we normally do. It's typically been Christopher and I talking at each other, and this is more of a, I don't know, how would you describe it? I mean,
I think it's a nice change of pace. Like I feel like it's more than anything, it's just kind of a different format, like I think it's a little bit more of like an immersive kind of discussion. And I think in like former like I think the last time, I mean, this is really interesting for me because I've always been curious as to like the nitty gritty for like, how shochu is made. And I remember in a Shochu'sday past, you were at Yamato Zakura, and kind of going over, some of like those processes, like the cutting and washing and just kind of getting a layout of that stuff. But I think that these episodes are a cool way to, or they've been very informative for me to kind of see, just kind of hear laid out like the specific processes, and then like all of the, contextual stuff there. It's like, I walk over to this part, like there's a hose sitting there, it's really old, I pick it up, like this is what all of that kind of stuff. Like you can definitely feel like you're there, and it definitely helps to like, connect some dots that I hadn't really made before. So
cool. I'm glad that's how it's working. We do have a video that we're planning on posting, hopefully in the not too near future, just trying to work on the narration for the video itself. We've got the entire production process, and how it'll differ from the podcast episodes is the podcast episodes actually break it down chronologically in time during the day. So when we wake up, we start with this work, then we do this, then we do that. That's the way the podcast is. It's what do we do in the morning? What do we do in the afternoon? The video is the production process from start to finish. So it starts with steaming the rice and inoculating the steamed rice with koji and then going into later, the sweet potato processing and everything, where in the podcast, it's almost like you've got this fractured timeline because you're doing different steps of the process out of order, basically, because while you're waiting for the potatoes to steam, you go off and you do something else. And, it's a different way of experiencing it. But our editor, Rich Pav, who's ended up doing the narration on the podcast, is he's got a pretty crazy voice for radio.
Yeah, for sure.
And then he's a big fan of this legendary narrator named Joe Frank, who recently passed away. And Joe Frank's audio stories are just incredible. And he, he had underlaid these like a little bit of music, little ambient sounds, things like that. And so Rich has tried to tie that into the podcast because he's a big fan. So in some ways, it's like an homage to Joe Frank storytelling, which is kind of a treat for me because I've always enjoyed Joe Frank's work as well. But
when I imagine too, as an editor and in other ways, like a narrator, to kind of have that platform to kind of just try out those like narrative tricks and stuff, and just like, hey, look, we're all doing something that we're enjoying doing, might as well throw in that kind of flavor in there.
Sure. Yeah, and it's funny because I've the writing that I've done in the past creatively has either been as written stories or screenplays for film, and to write for audio is completely different, right? And so Rich really had to coach me. He read the first draft of the first episode. He's like, "Yeah, this is not gonna work.
I'm not gonna read this."
And then there were a lot of words that he was stumbling over, and he's like, "Keep it simple. Use easy to pronounce phrases and lots of punctuation. That sort of thing." I think we're learning. Unfortunately, it's only a 3-part series, so at least this time, maybe there'll be future narratives that we do this way. But for now, this is all we have planned. But yeah, anyway, if you haven't, please give it a listen. We did have somebody let us know what they were drinking. Looks like Colby. Yeah, drinking Yamato Zakura. So again, ties in nicely with this Ichiki Shochu beginning to today's episode. And is it? So you bought in Beni Imo, is that right? From Yamato Zakura?
So we have Beni Imo, and we have their standard classic white Kogane Sengan brand as well.
Cool.
So we're selling it actually, today's Tuesday. So yeah, like as of this week, we're launching it. We only have a small amount, like 24 of the white ones. That's all we were able to get. But we have a little better stock of the Beni Imo. So if you want from Umami Mart, I should say, I work at Umami Mart. If you want to get the standard Yamato Zakura brand, we're selling it in a 2-pack. So you can either buy the Kogane Sengan and the Beni Imo, or you can just buy the Beni Imo on its own.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
The Beni Imo is amazing with soda.
So good. So good.
Yeah, it's a really, really good drink.
Yeah.
And I would actually just, of course, I think everybody should try to get their hands on both of those, because it's amazing to me that Yamato Zakura, the smallest shochu maker in Kagoshima, is now available in the US. Unbelievable.
That's a good thing.
But it's absolutely great. But the reason I recommend the Beni is that he makes much less of it, and it's really hard to get your hands on even here in Japan. And there will be less available in the future, just due to the diseases that they've been having with the potato harvest. And the purple potatoes were hit hardest early on. And so he's been able to make I think he's only made it once in the last 3 years. So definitely get your hands on it while it's available, because it may not come back for a little while.
This must have been from that run, or maybe the one, you know, prior to that, because, you know, we got this stuff from like a small, like, boutique, importer wholesaler. And, you know, like it took us a while for us to get in contact with them. You know, we were just like, we just heard like whispers that, you know, Yamata Sakura was around, and we were like, we need it. So, you know, finally we got a line into these people, and yeah, they weren't even truly up and running yet. So, but I imagine it was probably sitting in a warehouse. From what I understand, is they were just kind of selling it to their friends, like shops and restaurants and stuff. So, so they haven't really given it a chance to fly. And I think the shipments all tapped out too. So I think they're waiting for another container right now in Japan. So who knows how long it'll take.
Yeah, sure. No, the logistics are unbelievable. It's been painful for a lot of people. Cool. Well, that's great news that you've got it, and definitely recommend folks go to umamimart.com and place the order right now, because it's not going to last long. So cool. Good for Colby. That's a great drink. All right, so why don't we get started with our main event, which is Ian. You're the star today. So yeah, I guess I first became aware of you through social media, and we communicated a little bit, and I don't even know if I knew that you worked at Umami Mart at that time, or maybe it was before you even joined the team. But how long have you been at Umami Mart? What do you do at Umami Mart? Let's start with that.
Yeah, so I've been with Umami Mart since early July of 2019. So I had a nice, you know, warm up 5-6 months of like
normal life,
getting to enjoy, you know, something new and exciting before you know, things changed very drastically just in the world. But
sure.
You know, so I started out as a shopkeeper, and I started bartending a little bit, and then once COVID hit initially, the shop closed. You know, we were just doing like pickup stuff, and I was out of the shop for a few months, like 3 months, and then I came back on, and it was just Yoko and Kayoko and I and Mike, our shipping guy, just handling, because like the online business did not stop, and as everyone well knows, people did not take the pandemic as an opportunity maybe to drink less. Not to speak as a generalization, but you know, I think alcohol sales definitely saw an uptick, and especially things like curbside pickup and home delivery and stuff were you know, big things. So yeah, and eventually as things started to open up and we like gradually started opening up the shop again, they brought me on as the shop manager. So I do all of the stuff that entails, and you know, keeping an eye on inventory and ordering, and as you know, just that kind of nitty gritty stuff. But I also get to do a lot of fun creative stuff for the shop, like you know, I do a lot of copywriting. If ever you read like tasting notes for shochu, or like a bottle of shoyu or something, and you're like, interesting interesting word choice there, that's probably me, and maybe Yoko and Kayako just haven't checked it. But no, I mean, they check everything. But yeah, I get to be creative. I, you know, do a good amount of writing. I get to bartend. All of us at the shop like have a bartending shift. But yeah, I've kind of done a little bit of everything there. They even like my original, like oldest background, I guess, would be like in coffee, as far as just like work that I've done. Like I was a barista for about 10 years, and I feel like a lot of my roots in the Bay Area, which is where I'm from originally. I've moved around a little bit, but have been in like the coffee world. So naturally, when we were kind of thinking like of creative and like zany things to do at Umami Mart, we were like, I don't know, why don't we try serving coffee? So the Umami Mart bar now, like on weekends when I'm there, is now a place where you can go at like 2 p.m. and like drink a whiskey highball, shochu, sake, or get pour over coffee. I mean, so just kind of like little things like that. Yeah, keep things really interesting.
That's cool. When what's the? I guess having not been there, sadly, thank you, COVID. I haven't made it out to the Bay Area in quite some time. But what's the bar experience like? I know because I'm imagining. I mean, you've got the shop in the front and the bar in the back. Essentially, is how I imagine the space.
Yeah, I mean, that's the situation. We have like a counter with 6 seats, and we have two tops that are all in, the space about the size of like my living room or a little bit smaller. And yeah, it's basically like, the whole shop is set up like we've got like tables and display shelves and glassware shelves and all this stuff. And then it's like you reach like the edge of the shop, and then we have like a couple little like wooden shelf barriers, and then it's like, and like you look past it, there's like a counter, and then there's like a huge rack of bottles, and so it's a cool little bar. I think still, like, I mean, we have a lot of customers who are like coming in for their first time, or who have just like walked by a lot and we've been closed or what have you. So they'll just like kind of poke their head in, and then even if there's someone back there, like if I or like DeAndre or Kyoko are back at the bar and there are people sitting and drinking, and there's someone like actively, pouring drinks, people will kind of poke back and be like, what the hell are you doing? Or like, it's like, I think a little bit of like of a shock, that we're doing that back there. And then I think that's kind of like the first hurdle. And then once, and then the main question is like, do you do tastings? And we're like, yeah. Well, we do tasting. Like, you could sit down and have something to drink and then taste it. But I think maybe, the question initially is like, are we doing like a, like, are we hosting like a seminar or something, or like a class and stuff? And so it's really, it just takes a little while for it to like soak in that, like, oh, this is a bar. Like, you can come back here and sit down and order a proper drink.
right
and enjoy it.
That's still pretty uncommon in the States to have a retail space that also has a bar inside. And I started to see them on the East Coast over the last couple of years in larger liquor stores, where what originally was sort of their tasting area, they eventually were able to get a non-premise license and started serving draft beer. And you're sitting next to the tequila aisle in a big liquor store, right? Having your draft beer, watching a ball game.
There's a place in Twin Cities, like Minneapolis, called Surdix, I believe, which is a large place. And my girlfriend is from Minneapolis originally, and her parents are there. So when we were going to visit, I was like talking about, Umami Mart and the format there, and they're like, oh yeah, there's a place here like similar to that, and it totally, like, it's like a proper liquor store in there, like Metro racks, like you know what I mean, like price tags with barcodes on them and the works. And then all of a sudden you look over and then you see like leather and like tables and stuff, and like that's like their tasting area. And it was cool, and that wasn't open when we were there, so I didn't get to sit down and try anything. But that's the kind of thing. In Japan, I think it's called kakuchi style drinking.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So kakuchi actually means essentially what, corner,
like visit, right? Or like in the corner.
Yeah, in the corner basically. And what it is, they set up a tiny little tasting area, and it really you're drinking what they sell, and they all have different formats, but it's usually standing, and it's usually very affordable. You're because they're hoping you're going to taste something like it and buy a bottle and take it home. So you might get a beer or a glass of shochu or sake for $2 or $3, and it's usually really good stuff if they're going to take the time to set that up and have they're usually trying to sell you things that are good, meaning a little bit more expensive. Pouring Kuro Kirishima by the glass doesn't really matter because everybody knows what it tastes like, right? It's for these smaller smaller distilleries and breweries that you might not have had a chance to try before, and here's your chance for a really affordable way. And kakuchi, as I understand, is more the term used here in Fukuoka, because I'll use the term to people from Tokyo or other parts of Japan, and then they don't know what I'm talking about. So tachinomi is essentially stand and drink, and those are standing bars, but those aren't necessarily inside liquor stores, which the kakuchi specifically refers to in a liquor shop. So
it's like a very specific set of parameters there.
Yeah, they can be a lot of fun. There's one near where I used to live, not that far from where I live now, here in Fukuoka. It's a super old liquor store. It's probably from the Showa era, hasn't been renovated. They've got like a 40-year-old bottle of Suntory whiskey up on the shelf. It's a 1971 Osaka World's Fair bottling, and it's never been opened, and they won't sell it.
Oh wow!
No.
Why would you?
It's been there since the shop opened, and it's all the old men from the neighborhood who go in and drink, and they have a tiny little television. It's seriously like one of those old portable televisions, that we used to have back in the day. Yeah, exactly. And they watch the Hawks game or the local news and drink shochu and just hang out until 9 p.m. when the shop closes, and they all go home and sleep it off and do it again the next day. It's the same guys in there every single day.
I would be there every day. There's something nice about that, it's like, especially regular, it's like a small place, and that kind of like sort of lived in feeling, I definitely get a lot from that, and I don't ever want to intrude upon that or anything, but I definitely like to observe it, and if I'm welcome there, that's definitely someplace I'll gladly stay.
Sure. Yeah, no, it took a little while for them to warm up to me. The customers warmed up, I think, quicker than the shop owner. And I remember maybe the second or third time I went in there, because I'd see that the other guys had like their bottle. They did bottle keep. The setup is basically like these isho bean crates with wooden tabletops on them. Those are the tables around the shop. And the regulars like literally take the tabletop off and get their bottle out. Right. And then they pay basically like a table charge
to get their bottle. Yeah, we have bottle keep. We have like maybe 4 or 5 customers who have bottles up there, but they're up on like the top shelf of our bar, so we have to go over and grab a stool and get it down. But we have some regulars who have some bottle keep, and that's always kind of fun.
Yeah, it's a fun part of the drinking culture here, and I'm glad to hear it's starting to appear in the States a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
But just to finish the story, the guy, the owner, when I said, "Oh, can I buy a bottle and leave it here?" He's like, "Maybe if you become a regular." And I was like, "How long will that take?" He's like, "Ask me again in a year."
Do you have a bottle there?
I'm not so sure. I do not. I don't go up. I don't go back often enough. I've never asked again. There's so many other standing bars around that I sort of
totally
bounce around a little here and there. So, but it is definitely fun. Well, that's cool. And so, what you said you grew up in the Bay Area, but that's not actually where you were born, right?
Yeah. I was born in Tokyo.
And how long were you there?
So I was there until I was around like 2.5 years old. Okay. And my sister, who's 5-6 years older than me, till till around 8 or so. So yeah, the story behind that is like my mom, when she got out of college, moved like directly to Japan in like 1978, I believe it was, or like late 1977, and going as, I mean, she did all kinds of different stuff, but the main one was teaching English. And my dad, so my mom is from Berkeley, California, and my dad's from New York, and independent. I think he moved there in 1980 or 81. I might not have that year right, which is odd because I tell this story a lot, especially at our bar. That's like a great, let Ian talk for a while kind of thing. But yeah, I think 1980 or 81. And so my mom was in Tokyo and my dad was in Akita. Was where he first was. And he was in Akita for a year. And then their mutual friend, who I think was a colleague of my mother's, who went to live in Akita, was my dad's senpai. And I believe that she convinced him to go teach down in Tokyo and work at the program that my mom was running.
I see.
And so in short, that's how they met. And then he moved back to the States for like a year or two to like try and finish up like an art history degree or something. And then wound up coming back, and I guess in a very sweet way, they were writing each other all the time, and whole romantic situation like that. But in short, they got married in 84. My sister was born in 85, and then I was born in 91. Yeah, and my sister grew up in Kobe, like was born in Tokyo, and then lived there, I guess, for like a year or so, and then they lived in Kobe for 5 years, and then my dad had moved back to Tokyo for work, so they moved back to Tokyo, and that's where they had me. And then we were there till like 93, like late 93.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
that's an unusual origin story. Yeah, for sure. I guess my sister totally, like we just went like to public school and stuff. We didn't go to any international schools. So my parents are both, pretty fluent in Japanese and had a lot of, had a pretty tight community of, fellow teachers, but also, just people in our neighborhood and stuff. And I guess my sister had a really strong Osaka ben. My dad said that she spoke like an Osaka trucker. Was kind of like her funny
thing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's Maya Ailey's Japanese is like she speaks Kagoshima Ben, the local dialect down in Kagoshima, which is inscrutable for many Japanese, and she learned from like old men in shochu bars, and so she just sounds like an oyaji, just an old guy.
Yeah, I've actually never heard
hilarious to hear.
If Maya speak Japanese, I'd love to.
When you're here sometime, I'm sure you'll have the chance.
Yeah.
Go down to Kagoshima and hang out with her. Yeah, sure. Yeah, cool. And then so, I mean, we obviously did the podcast episode about Umami Mart, so I'm sure people are familiar with the show, but I'm sorry, with the shop. But is there anything you'd like to add, or sort of what do you see as like key points, or maybe things that haven't been touched on in talking about what makes Umami Mart so special?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that makes it special, because, we're a really small team, Yoko and Kayoko, where I've been in business. The shop has been open for 10 years. This year, it'll be in the late summer. I also have to give a shout out to Chris Cabrera, who was the former shop manager who was there to help me get hired when I started working there. But he's actually the one who like got me into shochu. He was like, I just kind of dipped my feet a little bit into like Japanese whiskey, but in general, like wasn't that much of a drinker really, but like I knew that I had liked Japanese whiskey from like the previous time that I was in Japan, and he was like, you should try some of the shochu, and I was like, okay, I'll do it. And then and then the rest is kind of history from there. But he was with Umami Mart for a very long time, and Yoko and Kayoko tend to have really great creative and like curious people who work for them, and so I've had really gotten to work with like some really just passionate people, and the two of them are you can tell are just super passionate and enjoy what they do. So that's inspiring for me anyways. As for why anyone else should buy stuff from us, I don't know how directly that translates, but but I labor there and I enjoy myself. And I mean, and as far as the shochu front goes, I definitely have to plug Shochu Gumi as well, because it's definitely, for one thing, I think it's a fairly good value for what it is and the amount of work that we put into the club, and the research that Kayoko puts in. Like she has interview questions in Japanese to like the distillers, and like we try and get just as much information and background as possible, to kind of like give context to these things that we're releasing. But we're also like constantly kind of on the lookout just to see how we can make it better, and like kind of like new things we can offer to people. And I think that the Japanese drinks world is fairly small. Like the sake community, I would say, is like pretty tight. And then if you go like one rung closer to the center, and then you get into like the shochu world, like all of a sudden, like it's small, and especially like what we're doing, like this is the online community, and Colby says Shochu Gumi represent.
Yeah.
But like I appreciate that it's like a tight community, like when one is like online, and like when I'm trying to find new information about shochu, like the same resources come up, right? Like there's like Kanpai US, which you might be familiar with. There's like now stuff is starting to come out through like Sake School of America or JSSI, and I think they're starting to send like more resources out, but it's a little bit like a scavenger hunt. Kind of, like finding like these nuggets of information. And I'm working on my Japanese. I study it in earnest, but I wouldn't say my reading is very good at all, but I have a really good like a kanji translating just tool, like a hover over browser tool. And like when I'm curious about stuff, like basically there's like a lot of blogs that are just like 100% in Japanese, but there's so much stuff written about so many different brands and styles and stuff. So it's just kind of fun to like kind of like sleuth those out and like see what kind of like like nuggets of information I can glean from that. And so I mean, I guess back to Umami Mart, we're all super passionate about it. I mean, we love Nihonshu as well, and we love all of the things that we do, glassware and barware and home goods and stuff. But this is Japan Distilled podcast, so
thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Stay on point.
But like we're passionate about it. Like we try to embody it, and we just want to get as much of it out to as many people as we can. And like as for me personally, like I definitely wave the shochu flag high, and as part of my job, I wave the Shochu Gumi flag high, but it's also because I legitimately feel that people will enjoy their experience, being in our club. So if I had to if there was one plug, that would have to be it today.
Sure. No, that's a good one. And I was very excited when I heard that the Shochu Gumi was starting.
So
December 2019.
Yep.
Was the first
and
one.
I recently signed my brother up, since I can't get it here in Japan. I signed him up to get a shipment every month. So I think it's
hopefully
great.
You can manage to get your hands on some shochu out there.
Yeah, I'll work on it. No, that's interesting. And so you said that Chris introduced you to shochu originally. How long ago was that? And then what turned you onto it? Why did you get passionate about the category?
I think it was very, very shortly after I started working there. Like, I would say within, the first month is like trying to figure out just where everything is and where everything goes, and like, just what to do. But once I started kind of getting comfortable and was like learning about making recommendations and just kind of finally talking a little bit more about the stuff I was into, I think the first shochu I actually had was Kanoko from Satsuma Shuzo, the Shiranami aged barley, and like the little stout bottle. And I remember enjoying, because he told me I should check it out as like a whiskey fan. And I remember it was a little whiskey-like, just because of barrel aging. So you have like a little bit of that like woodiness, a little bit of like vanilla and caramel, but other than that, like, it was so light, like, just like, I think that's a really like refreshing and easy shochu. And so I thought that was interesting, like the fact that it's like a distilled spirit, but it's like so sippable, and I don't remember the next one I tried after that. It was probably like Hakutake Shiro or something.
Sure.
I just kind of started working my way through the different, main ingredient styles. And I think probably the first brand that I tried that like really made me fall in love with shochu was Kiroku from Kuroki Honten.
Okay.
Because they're like aged in clay pots and black koji, and I just remember sipping it and then just like being blown away by just like the finish on it. And like that one is just like, it's this awesome mix of like floral and then like funky black koji funk, right? But then it's like been aged for a while and it's like so mellow, and there's this awesome like creme brulee kind of finish, and like lots of interesting like dark fruit and stuff. And I was just like, oh my god, like this is awesome. And this is like before COVID, and I remember I brought a bottle of it to a show that my friend was having in his like recording studio. He had like a recording studio in like not an abandoned, but like an unused office space in Chinatown, like under a fortune cookie factory in Oakland, Chinatown. And I was just like passing this bottle around. I was just like, you have to try this. And yeah, that's definitely been one of my go-tos. And that definitely got me further into the, the emo category as like a favorite of mine, and just kind of exploring that. But and yeah,
that's a great one for sure. And everything Kuroki does is just so well made. I mean, they're just one of the top distilleries, no question. So it's not surprising at all that one caught your attention. And yeah, I can see how that opened up your world for sweet potato, which is, I think, where a lot of the enthusiasts settle, because it's just such an interesting and diverse style in the shochu world, where so much of the rice and barley is dominated by vacuum distillation, probably a little bit more barrel aging as well. And then with sweet potato, you've got all of that, all the funk from the sweet potatoes, from the koji, atmospheric distillation.
And the atmospheric distilled, exactly.
Just gives it so much more
it definitely
body.
Seems like a more like just kind of like no holds barred, like every I mean, it seems like there are a few kind of like discernible styles where you're like, okay, like this is like maybe they're going for like this kind of profile or going for this kind of profile, but then like it seems like it's just kind of like, okay, well, we're featuring these potatoes and we're featuring, like there's going to be a white koji and a black koji version. There's going to be, aged or not aged, like lightly filtered, all this stuff, and so I feel like there's a lot more, or there's just a lot of opportunities even within like one brand or like product line where you can just like A/B it, right? Just like so many different expressions within like the same discipline, I guess, and they're really only tweaking like a variable here or a variable there. So
sure,
that's exciting for me for sure.
And that's nice that those expressions come over that way. In fact, Chris called those sipping on Shiroyutaka Hozan. So one of the
superior choice.
One of the Hozan series. And you've got the 3 or 4 main brands from the Hozan, like Kicho Hozan, Hozan, and what's the white one now? Is it
Hakutake?
Hakutake
Hozan,
Hozan. So you got those 3 as like the white, black, and yellow koji. Sorry, black, yellow, and white koji expressions. But then you've got things like Shiroyutaka, which gives you a different potato expression, right? All from the same.
And they're Genshu also. I think they're Muroka Genshu is what we're told. So it's like, and then they control. I think all of the other things are the same. Like it's white koji for all of them. They're all Genshu, all like lightly filtered, and then the only thing that changes is the potato that they're featuring.
That's right.
It's amazing. It's great.
It's cool that they bring those over, and people have a chance to find them. Those bottlings are very rare here in Japan.
They're actually getting hard to get here now too.
I can imagine. They usually in Japan you see them in izakaya, like shochu specialty izakaya, only as ishobin. You virtually never see the smaller bottles available in liquor stores.
Well, I know that maybe there's not a ton. Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. I have earpods, like unreliable, but I think maybe a combination of like limited bottlings and probably, there was, of course, I'm sure a year or longer of like pretty unstable demand from the US. And we were told that they're probably not going to be bringing that series back in like under the same iteration. But hopefully with like the new bottling or like the more flexibility with like Japan's like domestic bottlings of spirits, like hopefully we'll be able to, some more of it will be making it back over to us, because I feel like having to rebottle as a 750 mil is just like if I were, Nishi is not a small distillery by any means, but like if I were, if I had like a limited run of something, I just like can't imagine I could be bothered to, buy however many bottles and like make a whole new label and stuff. So hopefully we're gonna see more of these brands coming in, because I just feel like the barrier for entry for that has kind of been lifted. I think it'll probably take some time for people to kind of jump on it, but hopefully there's a little bit more incentive, if we can show that there's a demand and people will, not only buy it but enjoy it and buy it again, that people will have some more motivation to get some of those brands out to the US.
Yeah, the glass situation certainly helped a lot. What Ian was referring to, for your unfamiliar, is that the US for a long time, spirits could only be bottled in certain sizes, which were basically in the range we're used to seeing on shelves, with 375 ml, 750 ml, and 1 liter, and then on up in half-liter increments. But in Japan, the traditional bottling sizes are 720, 900, 1.8, and none of those were legal in the States until, I guess, December 2021. Yeah. So now those bottle sizes suddenly are fair game, as is 700 ml, which is the European fill size for spirits, which a lot of Japanese whiskeys are bottled at 700 here in Japan. So it's going to open up, I think, a lot of opportunity for especially smaller makers to not have to worry about sourcing an unusual fill size, 750 bottle, and be able to package probably more affordably as well.
Yeah.
In my experience working with different brands, the 750 ml glass over here is expensive, but the 900 and the 720s are pretty cheap. So that could also lower prices for consumers, which would be a good thing.
I think it's a win-win. Hopefully it just takes a little bit of time, because you're right. It was like in December, so it hasn't been that long. But already, like at Umami Mart anyways, we've gotten all the new like Komagatake stuff from Mars whiskeys. All of those are 700 ml. We just started like this week. We're like launching, or they've been kicking around the shop for like maybe a couple weeks, but we just started carrying the 1.8 Ishobin of that Shiraishi Shuzo. We have a handful of those, and then also like EY. We have like an EY whiskey, EY 45, and like a 1.8 liter bottle, which is like
somebody sent me.
It's so funny.
Yeah, somebody sent me a picture of that on a shelf, and it actually looks really good. They did a nice job with the packaging for a 1.8 liter bottle of whiskey.
For sure.
Amazing.
For sure. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's nice to have them. And, we also, as part of like that, shipment of like interesting shochus, we also got the Tomita Jozo.
Yeah,
I think Tomita Jozo, the Kokuto one. So we got their Ryugu. Yeah, Ryugu.
Yeah.
And that one comes in a 900 ml bottle, and like, it's so sweet. Like like the first sake I bought in a 900 ml bottle, I just was like, oh my god, this just makes so much sense. Like, why wouldn't you do this everywhere? And of course, like you look in Japan, like they're just so, it's just such a common bottle size. So
I've got one right here. This is a 900. Nice. This is Shigemasu, which is a local. Well, it's called Shigechu, is what they're calling this. It's a Kastori shochu from here in Fukuoka. I'd never seen this packaging before. It's kind of glossy, but it's they're a well-regarded sake brewery here in Fukuoka. I only ever see their stuff in Fukuoka. I think I've seen their shochu once in Kumamoto. Never seen their sake outside of the prefecture.
Wow, super local.
Yeah. But I just found this over Golden Week. I was down in Yame, which is a tea growing region in Fukuoka, and popped into this interesting looking bottle shop, and he was a big fan of Shigemasu and had this bottling of their shochu, which as I said, I'd never seen before. So it's pretty cool to find.
Have you cracked? It looks like it's not even cracked yet, huh?
I haven't. No, this was going to be my newly opened, but I went in a different direction last night. So
okay.
I brought it out and then I didn't open it. But cool. Yeah. Well, so maybe I realized, so Christopher normally hosts, so I forgot to even do booze news. Why don't we jump over to booze news, since we're coming up on an hour. I think the big news for whiskey fans anyway is that Yamazaki distillery tours have reopened. So if you manage to get back to Japan, you can tour that distillery. They've revamped their tasting menu, and it sounds like the tour is as good as ever. And the nice thing about the Yamazaki distillery is it's situated between between Kyoto and Osaka, right about a 10-minute walk from a train station. So for tourists, it's very easy to get to. And they have reopened, although you need a reservation in advance. And of course, because they just reopened, their reservation schedule is just wiped out. It's really hard to get.
Yeah, totally. I'm sure.
But for people who are interested, like the minute you buy your plane ticket, go to the Yamazaki website and book your tour once you know your travel schedule, because it's well worth the visit. And related to that, actually, it was just announced, I think yesterday in the States, was the 2022 Yamazaki limited editions were released. Let me share my screen for a moment. I always struggle with figuring out how to do this. You'd think StreamYard would make this easy. Let's see. Share screen. Select window. And of course, it's not showing now because I had minimized it. Let's unminimize it. This makes for scintillating live stream, doesn't it?
It's good TV for sure.
All right. I'm gonna cancel this. What is it not doing? Yeah, it literally does not show up in my list. All right, forget it. Just trust me. There's a new
new Yamazaki.
New Yamazaki 2022 limited editions have been released to the U.S. market. I'm going to put it in the chat, so in the comments, so that people can see it for themselves. So yeah. Anyway, that's our booze news. So why don't we move on to newly opened? You mentioned what you had opened, or what you were sipping on anyway.
Oh yeah. So I actually have a newly opened prepared, but this is the Yaki Imo that I'm sipping on, and then I just have this guy handy too, just because we were talking about Isho bean. So this is Shiraishi Shuzo Tengu Zakura, and then this is their this here is the Ikenohara, which is the farm, I believe, that the Kogane Sengan potatoes come from. So from what I could research, is they have a series of like Genshu and non-Genshu. This one is like 35%, so I'm sure it's just right about there at Genshu, but they have a whole series in a similar package like this, and they have a different farm name that they feature there. So
yeah, he's really doing
good
terroir in a big way, which is really cool to see, making relationships with local farmers, and did the Isho bean come wrapped in paper? Because the domestic bottling wrapped in white paper.
Yeah, so they come wrapped in white paper. This one had a like silver or like a gray, I guess you could call it, because they all have a different like a different tape seal at the top.
Okay.
And so the Yaki Imo one comes wrapped in paper, and this one came with a red tape seal. I think this is the 20. Well, this one's been aged for a bit too. So this is distilled in 2016. So it's been aged for a while too. And in the research that I found, I couldn't find this exact one because I think, this label is for export, but the other distilled in 2016 Yaki Imo Shochu they're doing has a green tape seal at the top. So if you're out hunting for bottles and looking for the ones in Japan, the Yaki Imo ones are going to be the green seal at the top.
Cool. Yeah. Good info. And for those unfamiliar, Yaki Imo is actually roasted sweet potatoes rather than steamed. So you get more of a, I guess, smoky cooked expression than you get from the other sweet potato shochus. Not so common here in Japan because I think it's difficult to work with. But when they're made right, they're pretty amazing.
Yeah, this one is pretty wild. I hadn't, because we have Noka no Yome here from Kirishima Joryusho, who makes Akarui no Son. So we have their Yaki Imo expression out here, and that's very, very good. But this one is crazy. It tastes like you're drinking like mezcal.
Nice.
It's awesome.
Yeah, Shiraishi, the Toji there he's a little bit of a mad scientist. The first time I visited him, he doesn't really have a tasting room. He's too small. It's just kind of his office. But lining the walls was distillate with various essentially macerations or different ingredients resting in it. So you had like a ginseng root, you had a daikon, you had all these different things. And then as you get further along the shelf, you start to see insects and animals. He's resting in the spirit, and you start to think, I don't think I should look any further along that shelf.
Yeah. There's a few more feet of that shelf, and I'm just going to stop here.
Yeah. It's a wild place, and he's just he's just a consummate, I guess, experimenter. He's just this mad scientist in a ways. It's almost alchemy with him, and he became friendly with a friend of ours who's Mexican, who lives in Kagoshima, and so they started sharing mezcal, and then that he's like, I want to make a mezcal style sweet potato shochu.
Yeah,
and so he started to experiment.
How can he probably on his way?
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, I just love to see that level of creativity, especially from a tiny distillery.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because he you know, if he had a different mindset, he'd be like, I'm going to try to make a brand that's popular with everybody, and I'll make this a huge company. But no, he just wants to make cool stuff that people will think are interesting, and then keep his niche fans happy, you know, and that's what he does.
Well, I mean, it's awesome that we're very, very, very grateful to have it here because, you know, as you know, like it's been the same number of shochu brands out here for a long time. And, you know, gradually, you know, and I feel like maybe the more boutique stuff that was there at some point, like, you know, hasn't been back for a while, or, you know, discontinued from supplier or what have you. And, you know, we've definitely gotten some, you know, some new and interesting stuff. But I think that, I mean, I can speak for myself anyways, that anything that just like tastes new, you know, that just tastes a little bit different, where I'm like, oh, like it's this kind of style, but it happens to be from another distillery. You know, I'm just all over it. I really love that opportunity to just try that. Cause like you were saying, like at the beginning, like when you were living in the States, like you were just like trying to chase that experience. Cause it's like knowing that it's right there. Like, I mean, Japan's, I'll say it's pretty far from here. But you know, like we're all like, I spend a lot of time like on Instagram, like just following just tons of liquor stores and bars and stuff, and of course distilleries and just general shochu people and stuff. And I just, you know, I just see the stuff that's floating around, like when Shinshu or like Shin Shochu season happens, I just see all that stuff. I'm like, oh my God, I want it. I just want it so badly.
No, I know the feeling exactly. Absolutely. Well, I'll share my, we are coming up right on an hour, so we try to keep it under an hour. So this has been great, but my newly opened, this is not opened because I finished my newly opened bottle. It still has a seal on it. This is Yamato Zakura's Summer.
Oh, nice.
Sorry, the glare is pretty bad, but it's got kind of this cute, come on, block the light. Let me turn the light on. All right, okay. This little kind of sleeping face. And then he recommends actually drinking it Mizuwari with hyuga nuts, so the Miyazaki citrus. And he's like, you can just drink it all day long, and it's just super refreshing sweet potato shochu from Yamato Zakura. Awesome. And he did a little event this weekend in Kagoshima with some local craftspeople who were, you know, pour over coffees, and you had ceramics and woodworking and things like that. And he was there selling bottles of his shochu, and I was able to swing by when I arrived in town and pick up a couple of these. And the first one didn't last long, but I'll keep one around a little longer. So really, really nice. And he's awesome. Starting to do these little, and he'll do the 500s, these tiny bottles, which is unfortunately with all the fill size changes, 500, which used to be legal in States until I think the 80s, now is not legal. Why not? 500 is a great size. Yeah. It's a really nice
kind
size.
Of a great size. Yeah.
But no go. So maybe in the next round of changes. But
are all of the like amazing
the amazing series is in like 640.
Okay.
So I got a bottle
totally random. Is that
oh, sorry, 5. Yeah, it's Nakamura. This is the Teardrop, which is a 2021. This is actually a 550 ml bottle.
Okay.
But yeah, there's some weird fill sizes over here, because fill size doesn't matter as long as you say what it is. Anything goes. Right. So there's wines in 187s.
Okay.
You know, what's that?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's weird. So, but this has been great, Ian. Really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show, and definitely be having you back.
Glad I could make it on. Yeah.
We may need to have you on to introduce. Yeah, I will. We should have you on semi-regularly to tell us what new shochu you've got going on at Umami Mart, because it's
we can do that for a little while while we're getting a bunch of new stuff, but
sure.
That might have to be like a twice a year deal.
Yeah. Not too often, but yeah.
Well, I mean, who knows? Cool. Yeah,
that's right.
I mean, we're doing what we can. I know that you will too. So
yeah, no doubt. So
awesome.
Great stuff.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for tuning in, and let's have a kanpai wherever you are in the world. Stay healthy, happy, and enjoy yourself. Cheers.